had 2 weeks off, although one of those weeks you had a Haggadah under your face, so you did look at some Hebrew, I know. But I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't study this Hebrew regularly. I completely understand. So, I
Not
think I
only
mentioned,
that, we didn't even read the email that told us to read it.
all right, now we are just so comfortable with each other, the truth comes out. That's all right. I did tell you in my email that we're going to return to Ashrei, and I, of course, will be true to my word. It's an oldie, it's a familiar one, but let's talk about let's talk about what we have left of the semester before we go too far, and so I don't forget at the end and run out of time. Whoops, I just checked everybody off in the wrong place, but that's all right. I'll move them all over. According to my schedule, we have, the class goes, I think, till June 3rd, although Julia kind of said, well, if you want to, end before Memorial Day, that's kind of your choice. And I know Memorial Day weekend might be troublesome for people. It just kind of depends. So I can be flexible. In terms of the curriculum, we have almost virtually covered all of we certainly covered all the main prayers. There are a few snippets of prayers that were part of the Musaf Amida, I think, that we didn't get into in great detail. But if, I've had some requests from people of prayers to cover, which we will. Hatikva, what Mary Ellen requested. I think we should do Yigdal, which I don't believe is in this book because Yigdal is done Friday nights, not Shabbos morning. But if you guys want to take a look at our En Kelohenu book and ask me to cover things, I'm happy to. What's that for? Yigdal? Or alternatively, if there are other prayers or things that you'd like me to cover, just send me an email or chime in or something. Let me think. I also was thinking maybe we would go back to the paragraphs following the Shema. Those are always good to practice reading, and one of them is a particular tongue twister in my opinion. But we still have Ashrei to conquer. We could spend another month on Ashrei, which I know you don't want me to do. But as I say, I do feel obligated that we should spend a little more time on Ashrei. I do want to point out in the En Kelohenu book, if you go to the second part of the book, which is he's kind of I'm trying to see what page it starts on. It starts at page 99. He calls it part 2 of the book, which he has exercises for reading fluency. He has vocabulary building. He has practice and some more sort of side-by-side prayers. But he has a particularly interesting note on Kaddish on page 116. At least that's the page in the physical book. And so I wanted you to understand about that. And I know I talked about the various types of Kaddish, the reader's Kaddish and the mourner's Kaddish and the Kaddish to Rabbanan. And so the Chatzi Kaddish. And his note kind of gives you a better understanding, I think, of why there are those different Kaddishes. So I wanted to point that out.
Very interesting.
Thank you. And I also wanted,
excuse me, the book, my book only stops in the 70s, so I don't have.
All right.
I have an older edition of that book.
You have the physical book, or is it?
I have the physical book.
This blue one?
No, mine is different from that.
So I think you're thinking of the
Shalom.
Shalom Aleichem book. This is the Ein Keloheinu book. This is the second
Ein
book.
Keloheinu. Oh,
Yeah.
I might have that. I don't know.
Yeah, this is the second book. This is the more advanced.
Ah.
This is the book that we've been using all semester. So, and there's a PDF of it that was sent out early on. So if you can't find it, I'm happy to send you the PDF again, or I can make a copy of this page for you. But it's a really good book. It's just not. It's as I said at the beginning, there's more English in the book than Hebrew in its own way. And so as a teaching book, for me, I used the curriculum, but we didn't go page by page like we did in the Shalom Aleichem book. I think there's more for you to get out of reading it on your own, and then it's a companion to the class more than the pure textbook of the class. Someone else had a question or something? Okay.
Barbara, you have a question?
Me, no, I'm sorry. I
Okay.
should mute myself because I'm coughing.
I have a question, and I don't know if this is something you're comfortable doing, but what would you call it? Bima etiquette or Bima choreography?
I call it Bima choreography, exactly. Yeah.
Last Shabbat, I had my first Aliyah since my daughter's bat mitzvah. She's 38 years old, and I was a nervous wreck. Could you go over the form of how you say your parents' Hebrew name,
Oh.
that business, because fortunately, the man who was conducting the service, we're getting a new rabbi, and the cantor was in Israel for Pesach, and they were desperate. We barely had a minyan. I went all 4 days, but I said, all right, I'll give it a shot, But I get so confused if I'm called up. When do I open the curtain? When do I close the curtain? Do I sit down, in between? Do I just stand there? Could we go over any of that? I mean, forget about something like dressing the Torah. I mean, that I would be completely out of my A grade.
We can absolutely,
huh?
we can absolutely do that. So I have said for many years, particularly to people new to Judaism, new to service, new to going to a synagogue and being there, people who might be going for just bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah, and feel very out of place. I have said to them, believe it or not, choreography is 90% of the game at certain synagogues. So if you know the choreography, you're made in the shade. On the other hand, if you feel like you haven't got a clue, then you absolutely feel like, oh my goodness, I'm just going to make a fool of myself, which they won't let you do.
Right.
Because it's such a great honor for you to agree and go up, and they want you to feel honored. But yes, we can absolutely talk about all of that. I mean, if you want to talk about it now, we can talk about it now. Ashrei is still out here holding. It'll hold. But, it's interesting. I wonder if there's similarities to a Seder. So for instance, people who traditionally come to my house for Seder, it's very participatory, and we expect everyone to participate. The leader does, how I only have one Seder plate, and the leader passes things out and we pass it around. And with COVID this year, the 2 years prior, it was just the 3 of us in the house. So it wasn't a big deal. My husband, my son, and I, we lived together. So him touching it didn't matter. This year, I used these little teeny, they're not plates and they're not bowls, but they have raised edges. So for him to put the things, the piece of matzah, the matzah and the charoset, or the charoset and bitter herb, and he would put 2 on one, pass it all the way down to my end of the table where 2 of us would take it. He'd do it again, pass it halfway down the table. Then he'd go to the other side, and that was all dandy for my immediate family, my sister, whatever, that was like, this made in the shade. This is so easy. The second night, we had cousins who have been to my Seder for years, but their children are young enough that their 7-year-old, the last time he was here, he was what, 5 maybe, or 4, I can't recall. And they had to say, they came the second night. The first night they had a Seder at their house, and each of them had their own salt water to dip in, and each of them had their own this, so that when he's like, well, where's my stuff? I can't do it. We're like, yeah, you can. We're going to pass it to you. It's going to be fine. And he was like, I don't think you dipped this. I don't think this is right. It's like, trust me, there's plenty of salt water on that piece of parsley, it's really fine. So he was, feeling like this isn't the way we do it. And we needed to explain to him, there's a couple different ways to do it. And so, I didn't keep this out, I'm sorry. But so at the end of the evening, I think I talked to you about, I have this beautiful, so it's essentially one of these notebooks, but it has a beautiful cover on it that my mother made that is for Passover. And I've been keeping a record of every Seder for 25 years. So it was sitting to the side of us. I opened it up and I read to him from the last Seders he's been to at my house. And he was blown away. He was thrilled that I had notes about when he was such a tiny baby, and when he was his first Seder at my house, his next Seder, the first time he could find the Afikomen. So, it's just, you want it to feel familiar, but at the same time, I think you want to experience how someone else is doing it, which brings me to, Margaret, that at different synagogues, they each do it a little differently, but for the most part, it's, especially if you're using the same book, right? If you're using the Lev Shalem or even Sim Shalom, there are notes in the book that tell you this is when the ark should be open. This is when you should rise. These are, the cues are now in the book, which they didn't used to be. And that's the beauty of the new book, is it's all in there. But I can tell you that, for instance, I've only really, I guess I've been a member of 3 shuls in my lifetime, but, and the shul I'm a member at now, I joined because it reminded me so much of the synagogue I grew up at as a child. And the congregation, those who are regular congregants, know that regardless of what the book says, when you're singing a certain part, particularly before you open the ark, the congregation knows we're about to open the ark. So everybody just starts getting up, even though the rabbi or who's ever leading the service hasn't said, and now we rise, Then there's the whole notion also that, so again, when things sometimes change or evolve over the years, it used to be, the way I was taught, if you were standing for a part of the service and you got to Chatzi Kaddish, you stayed standing. You stayed in whatever position you were in. If you were standing and you had a Chatzi Kaddish, you did the Chatzi Kaddish standing. If you were sitting and you got to the Chatzi Kaddish, you did the Chatzi Kaddish sitting. Not everybody, some people I think are old fashioned, and seems like regardless, they get the Chatzi Kaddish, they want to be standing. And so it's kind of interesting what you see in shul. There's less of that now, I think, now that we are using Lev Shalem and the instructions are there. But it used to be kind of funny. And my husband would look at me, I think. He would be like, why are you sitting? Because we finished and I can sit now. And well, they're standing. Well, that's just because they stand for Chatzi Kaddish. I'm sitting, honey. So, and part of it is a comfort level, right, of confidence. So let's talk about an ark opening. The book will tell you, and I wish I could immediately turn to the page, but I'm going to do a bad job. But if one of you wants to suggest a page, we'll turn to it. So if it says the ark is open, in my shul, the gabbai will call you up, will bring you up to the bima and have you standing nearby half a page before, right? Or certainly might even be the whole page before. In my show, what they do is they'll come and get you and have you kind of wait in the first row, and then he'll motion you up to come up and be in the side, on the side seats or standing just to the side. And then the rabbi will nod to you to tell you to go over to the ark. And then, so before they start the prayer, they want the ark open, right? And certainly, I think you notice it more at Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur when, as I'm sure most synagogues do, they try to honor as many congregants as they can. And these are people who haven't done an ark opening very frequently or may not frequent services a lot. And so they're very unschooled in what to do. And they might not open it soon enough. But we'll wait. We wait until the ark is open to begin the prayer. That's protocol. That makes sense, right? And then and usually if the ark is open, then the congregation is standing, right? So the congregation should be standing. You open the ark, you begin the prayer. The ark is then closed, and then the congregation is seated. And certainly in my synagogue, the rabbi will wait until the ark is closed and then say, you may be seated. With an aliyah, so depending on how much advance notice the gabbai has of who's coming up to the Torah, who has the aliyah, he has their names written out. So for a woman, well, it shouldn't matter, woman or man. So I'm Rachel Tzipora. Rachel Francis is my English name. Rachel Tzipora is my Hebrew name. Bat Moshe is my dad. V'chaya Sarah, my mom. And that's traditionally how they call you up.
Okay, excuse me, so dad goes first.
Dad goes first.
Okay, and then the mother's name. Because
Correct.
the means and,
Correct.
essentially.
Correct.
Got it, thank you.
Correct. Now, sometimes they'll ask you because there's not, they've changed. They didn't have it written down. They didn't have enough people who had agreed. They weren't sure who was coming that day. And they'll ask you, and you might not know it in Hebrew. So you'll tell them. And sometimes they will do their best to take what you've told them and turn it into Hebrew. Sometimes they can't exactly do that. And I'm not really sure what they do then. Mary Ellen or somebody, do you have a sense of what they do when they can't really come up with a Hebrew equivalent?
I don't know, but my guess, the default position would be, since we're all sons and daughters
Right.
of Abraham and Sarah. So
That's
for
what I was-
example,
Right.
my Hebrew name is Hannah, Bat Avraham, Sarah.
Mhm.
No, I had no Jewish father, I had no Jewish mother, as some of you
Right.
are nodding. So that might be their default position.
Exactly. And that's what I was thinking as well. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think I have heard only a few times, not at my synagogues, where they kind of use the English name because they don't want to offend you, and it's what they've been told. So that's what they do. Okay, so they've called you. So I'll go back to a little before. So if you're the third aliyah, in my shul, the gabbai will motion to you when they're on the first aliyah, tell you to sit in the front row. Then when they're on the second aliyah, you should be up on the bima sitting off to the side. It's waiting in the wing right there because you're the next aliyah, but you need to be nearby, but not standing next to the Torah, next to the reader's table. So the aliyah ahead of you finishes. He does the second half. Everyone shakes his hand, and then the gabbai calls you. We'll use me. Yamod. No, I'm thinking. So yeah, Yamod Rachel Tzipora Bat Moshe V'chaya Sarah, and I'll step up, and I'll either take the cloth that's on that table, or if I'm wearing a talit, which I don't usually, I would take my tzitzis. I'd have them on my finger, right? If my son or husband were the Torah reader, I might take their tzitzis and wrap it around my finger. But they'll open the Torah to the spot. They'll use the pointer to point to where they want, where the reader will begin, and that's where you essentially touch it to kiss the Torah. So you don't touch the Torah though. your hand doesn't touch the Torah. Your tzitzis might, your cloth might. I kind of hover over. I don't really touch
Yeah.
it.
In my shul, the women who don't have tzitzit use the book,
Okay, fine.
use the Sim Shalom. That's what we're still
Yeah,
using.
okay, you use the prayer book. There you go. That's perfect too. So you kiss it, and then you start the first half of the Aliyah. Baruch Hu Adonai Habarah, right? Okay. Then after the first half of the chanting of the brachot, the bracha is done, the reader will then open the Torah up. He won't say amen. So you've finished your first half of the Aliyah, and the congregation will instantly usually say amen. The reader should not say amen until he or she is ready to begin the chanting. There shouldn't be this long pause between their amen and the chanting. Barbara?
I wanted to make one point that I think is tricky for a lot of people, is that they don't realize that the person having the aliyah also repeats after the congregants respond to the,
Right.
so
Mhm.
that gets skipped so many times, and it's
Oh.
just something that if you know it, you know it. So they're supposed to come back with Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Ba, and
Right. Then
a
right.
lot of people trip over that and don't do it.
okay. And
In
again, in
my
our
shul,
shul,
they have a cheat sheet right on the lectern.
yes.
Mhm,
Our cheat
mhm.
sheet doesn't repeat that, which
Well,
I
so-
think is a big
Oh.
mistake on the cheat sheet.
So at our shul, and maybe this isn't the case anymore, but it used to be that we would have, the gabbai would be up at the reader stand, the reader, the aliyah, and then another person. And that other person would take a finger usually and tap where the person who was chanting the aliyah should be to remind them, you got to repeat this. So, there's
And-
little.
And a new thing now, they give out cards, Rachel, which is a great idea. They're laminated for each
Uh-huh.
aliyah. So if you're sitting in the shul and you've been asked for an aliyah, they give you the card ahead of time so people can kind of look at it if they're a little nervous or not familiar. And it tells you step by step what to do. And then you walk up with that card. Yep. And then you give it to the gabbai. However, they did not get the fourth aliyah card back. Someone walked off with it, I guess. So they're running around without the fourth.
That's a
But-
good way too.
Yeah.
So, okay, so as I say, then the reader gets himself to she, they figure out where they are, amen, and then they do their chanting, okay? And then when they get to the end, there's usually a certain tune where each aliyah ends with the same sort of up and down notes,
cadence.
right?
Mhm.
Cadence, exactly. And oftentimes many in the congregation will sing it with them, and that's your cue. They've now stopped. They'll hold the pointer where they stopped. You're going to kiss it again, and then you're going to do the second half of the aliyah, right? Okay, so then you're going to be done. Everyone's going to say amen, and so you kiss it. He rolls the Torah back up. You do the second half of the aliyah. Everyone says amen. And then they shake your hand, say Yasha Koach, and you step off to the other side that you came from. At least that's how it's always been where I go, that you kind of come up on one side, leave on the other side, so that you don't run into the next aliyah who's coming up where you came from. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So that's, and then the choreography for other than an aliyah is for Hagba and Galila. So the person who lifts the Torah and the person who ties the Torah. Hagba is the lift, Galila is the tie. So when they have finished with the first Torah, let's just say, because sometimes we have two Torahs. So they finished with they finished the last aliyah for the first Torah. Now the Gabbai says, Yamor, the Hagba, Yamor, Galila, and those two should have already come up to the bima, been sitting in the chairs, waiting their turn. They step up. The Hagba is going to now show at least 3 columns of the
Columns,
Torah,
right.
right?
Mhm.
And so he lifts it, holding it that way. He's going to turn his back to the congregation so they can see those 3 columns, okay? And then he's going to be shown where to walk to find the chair. The Galila can either be with him or just kind of hanging out closer to the chair where he's going to sit down. In our shul, there's usually a gabbai at his shoulder, just in case he gets wobbly, because you can tear that Torah and then that Torah is not kosher anymore. So they don't want that to happen. And sometimes the lifter might get a little wonky, you know, especially if it's way to one side. They've learned over the years, only certain people can do it when the Torah is so on one side. And some men are good with the left side versus the right side. And they kind of know who's good with which. So the Hagba sits down, the Galila is right there and takes the top handles and starts twisting together to bring them in to the center, right? That's the idea. You want to evenly bring it to the center. And you don't want to over twist on one side, because then when they open it the next day to read, they're going to be way out of place. You want to do them equally to bring them together, and you want to make it snug. Then you take whatever is used to tie it. In our case, it's a wide sort of elastic, velvet covered elastic band that has a hook like this actually. Others, my mother made Torah binders, wimples that were on my kids' b'nai mitzvahs. The synagogue let us tie the Torah that they read from with the wimple that my mother made, and my mother was the Galila who wrapped it and tied it with that handiwork of hers. And depending on how long they are, she was up there winding, because the practice in making a wimple is that you have the names of all, if the person you're making it for, in this case, her granddaughter, is named for certain members of the family, you want to get to that part of the family to name the person she's named for as well as her. So the wimple can get very long, depending on how far back you went. In my daughter's case, it wasn't quite as far back as in my son's case, actually, I think. Nevertheless, but people were murmuring at her bat mitzvah, like, what is going on? Doesn't this lady know how to tie it? No, the answer is yes, she knows how to tie it, but it's kind of long. It's not just go around and clip it. It's go round and go round and now make it nice and tie it. So you tie it nice and snug, then you put the cover over. Then if it has a breastplate, you put the breastplate over. Then if the yad, the pointer goes over, and then I'm not sure if the person who's tied it moves it now to the Torah stand, or the gabbai moves it to the Torah stand. Usually the gabbai moves it and they stand it on this separate, it looks like a chair, but it's not, it's a Torah holder. And that's where it all goes. Now, if you have 2 Torahs to read from, the slower that is, the longer everyone's waiting for you to, then they uncurl the second Torah. Everyone's standing while all of this is going on. And they open up the second Torah. They find their place in the second Torah. They call up the next Aliyah, which tends to be the Maftir Aliyah. So,
Excuse me,
Maftir,
what does maftir mean? I'm sorry. I mean, what does it signify?
So the Maftir portion, usually the Maftir is the one who's also going to read the Haftorah, chant the Haftorah. And so they have a small portion of Torah before they then go into the Haftorah. I don't know what Maftir means. I just know what it is. Amidah means to stand. I don't know what Maftir means.
But then there's another aliyah after the maftir, isn't there?
No,
The seventh
Maftir is
aliyah?
last.
Oh,
Maftir is last. Yes, Maftir is always last. Immediately, it's absolutely the last Torah portion read, and then they usually stay up there. So the choreography is a little different for the Maftir. So they have come up just like any other aliyah came up, right? When the one before them is moving up to the Torah, they come up and they sit on the beam and to the wings, right, to the off to the side. So they're just holding their place to the side until the second Torah is placed on the reader's table, is opened, and then the Gabbai calls them Yamod, Maftir, and they then step over. They say not only the bracha, but they are the Torah. They could be the Torah reader. They don't have to be the Torah reader, but they can also be the Torah reader. Okay. So if it's a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, they might say, the Yamod might be a little longer. They might also say, coming to the Torah for their first time or whatever. It kind of depends on the synagogue. But on the other hand, if the bar bat mitzvah student has learned a lot of Torah, they will have been up there already as the reader, and they might now just be called as the maftir aliyah and the reader. You understand what I'm getting at there? So they've already been up there doing the chanting of the Torah as the shishi or as the shlishi, chamishi, whatever, rivi'i, those different aliyot come up, and then they themselves are still up there as the aliyah and the maftir reader, and then they stay up there because they're then going to do the haftorah. Marlene, unmute. There you go.
I just asked Rabbi Google what maftir meant because I was curious, and it says, noun in Judaism, the final selection of the weekly Torah reading, the person to whom it is read, who also reads the Haftorah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you said. So I thought that was interesting that that's what the noun means. And I guess in our synagogue, the minimum requirement for a child to become a bat mitzvah is to chant any aliyah and the maftir and the haftarah.
Okay. That's, I think, a higher level than some synagogues. Certainly, I know I've been to many bar bat mitzvah where they don't chant any of the Torah. They have to do the bracha for the aliyah, and they have to do some of the haftorah. But standards changed, and your synagogue. It's wonderful that you have such high standards.
So I guess as an adult, that'll be my requirement too.
Well, and those of you who are in the bat mitzvah class, you're probably not far enough along yet, whether they've told you that you need to learn some Torah cantillation and some haftorah. Have they gotten to any of that yet?
No, but I assume that's what's coming, so that's why.
Okay, yeah, I assume as well, right. They read the maftir portion from the second Torah scroll, and then they call the second Hagba and the second Galila for the second Torah. And it's, repeat the same thing. It's not the same people. You get to honor new people. The Haftorah is not read from the Torah scroll because it's from the books of prophets. It's not in the Torah. So it can be read from any one of a number of books, right? You can have the Haftorah in a book that the student has been studying now for a year and a half. You can get it from the Chumash, you can get it in a lot of places. So it's not any particular book that you have to read from.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Excuse me. Let me just understand this. Excuse me. The pollen is a gift to me. Okay. So the seventh aliyah and the maftir
are the same. The seventh aliyah is the maftir. You can't have more than 7. So that if there is a maftir, it would be the 7th.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Good question. Then. Good question. Okay. So,
but just on holidays like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we don't have 7. So the final one of that will be the maftir, but it won't be the 7th. It'll be
only on Shabbos, right? Shabbos we have the most, and that's when it would be the 7th. It might be the 5th on another day.
Right. But it is in the Ein Keloheno book, 104, gives us, where you were talking, Rachel, about
Yeah,
the vocabulary. So
Yeah.
it shows maftir and what it is.
so I'm right that there's no other meaning to the word. It's a noun that describes this.
Conclusion,
Function.
it's the concluder, right? The
Yeah,
concluder.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I get a star for that. It doesn't
Yes,
happen.
you do.
Okay. So Margaret, back to kind of choreography then. So the Torahs are both dressed and they're standing in their little holders off to the side. And we're going to now do the service, the concluding part of the Torah service where we return them to the ark, right? So just like we did at the when we took them out of the ark, they get marched around the congregation, right? And then
Not these days, but yeah,
Okay,
they get
well-
marched around
yeah, they might get marched just in front of the bima and right back
Yeah.
up, but they get marched a little bit. And then they're all standing in front of, and the ark doesn't get open until they come back up. And that you need to open the ark because you're putting them back in. So now they're standing there. Then the rabbi may nod his head or whatever, and they open the ark. They put them in, and that concludes the Torah service. They close the ark. You sit down. Now you might have a sermon. I mean, who knows, right? So there other questions about choreography? Okay, good. All right,
Thank you.
it's my pleasure. All right,
I'm going to go back to this, to the recording and probably listen again. Even though I've witnessed this many times, I still don't have it ingrained in me. And so I really appreciate this, Rachel.
recording of what I just explained?
Yeah, the whole,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Although I missed, so, but the Haftarah is done after the Torah is safely back in the ark, right?
No, the Haftarah, so let me go over this one more time. So the maftir is read, whether it's read from the one Torah you took out or it's read from the second Torah you took out. Then Hagban Galila, you roll it, you tie it, you cover it, you finish dressing it, you put it back in its holder. Then the Haftarah is begun. So
Okay.
the Torah is still sitting out. The ark has stayed closed throughout this entire time, but the Torah is out, but it's fully dressed. It's put to the side and the Haftarah is now chanted.
Okay.
All right, excellent. All right, I'm just checking that. Okay, thank you. Everyone, I was just double checking. There's nothing in the chat I need to address. All right, I'm going to share my screen to show you the ashrei that, oh, sorry, let's make this one get out of our way. Let's make this one nice and big. All right, can everyone see the ashrei in as large print as I thought we could use?
Yeah.
Okay, how's this? Look at that. Okay, big ashrei. All right, are you guys comfortable if I call on you? If you're not, when I call on you, just say, skip me, okay? But basically, I really think you just got to jump in and you got to read. So I'm going to start in my top box, which Barbara happens to be you. You signed in first. So you read the first two lines. You're muted. You sound great.
Okay, I'm done. It was perfect. Okay. I want to sing it. It's terrible.
You can if you want, but I'm going to make
No,
sure
that-
your pronunciation is good. But you can sing if you want.
Ashrei Yoshvei Vetecha Od Yahalalucha Selah. Ashrei Ha'am Shechachecha Lo. Ashrei Ha'am She'Adonai Elohav.
Nice. So I'm just going to say, this is ha'am. I think this is
Ha'am.
what you said. And this is shekacha. I know it's
Oh,
tricky.
that right.
Ha, ha.
Shecha-
Kacha. So the emphasis is really here where the harder sound is anyway.
Mhm.
Okay, but you
Okay.
did beautifully. Okay, Lenore, would you read with the short line and then 2 full lines?
Sure. Tehila le David. Aromim ha Elohai Hamelech V'avar ha Shimha Le'olam Va'ed. How Yom Havar Heha
Mm-hmm.
Ba'ahal Va Shimcha Le'olam Va'ed.
Very nice, really nice. The only thing I'll point out is this, while it's spelled Bechal Yom, it's usually pronounced Bechol Yom. And that's a pronunciation variance, right? That's the front of the book tells you that this is often more of an O than an A. But you did beautifully. Thank you.
Bechol.
Bechol, yeah. Jane, would you like to read? And if so, unmute.
This is one of my harder prayers to do. I don't know.
It's okay. Take your time.
Gadol ha.
So this is Gadol. There's a A under the Gimel.
Thank you. Gadol ho.
Adonai.
Oh, right. Adonai. Hela.
Hul.
Hello.
So this is Hul Lao.
Ma'od.
Mm-hmm.
Uli.
This is a V.
Relato.
The Ligue du Lato.
The Ligulato.
Mm-hmm.
Ayant Hakar.
So Ein Heker.
Ain Hakar.
Okay. You're doing fine.
No. Dode.
Door. So this is a resh, a Dalet and a resh. So door.
Door. Lador.
Mm-hmm.
Shabbat. Sheha.
Ma'aseh. This is a secha because the dot is over on the left, so it's a sin.
Ma'aseh.
Ha.
Amasecha. Ma'asecha.
Yes.
Bod.
Vu. Ugvu.
Uvud. Techa.
Oh, okay.
Don.
Do. Yagi do. Yagi do. Good. So it's just a matter of practice. All right. I'm going to review this one for everyone. Gadol Adonai Hulal Me'od Velig du Lato Ein Heker Dor Ledor Yeshabach Ma'asecha Ugvurotecha Yagidu. Okay, we are down to here. Connie, will you read for us?
Am I unmuted?
No, now you're unmuted.
Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
I hear you fine.
You can. Okay, my computer is off kilter. Hadar gavod hodecha, v'digva re, nif lotecha hasicha. V'azuz
Ve.
No
There's
rotech.
a, under the, see the under the vav? Ve'ezuz. You did beautifully. You just left out a vowel.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see what you're talking about. Ve'ezuz no rotecha yo meru.
Mhm,
Ug dulatecha
mhm.
amaprena. Asaprena.
Thank you. That you did great, Asaprena. You corrected all of your issues. You did beautifully. Thank you. Linda, will you read next? Wait, I'm not sure where, can you see where I am? Are you, I'm not sure if you're watching the screen or you're looking at a book.
No, I'm looking at the book.
Okay, so we're Zecher, you see the Zion? Okay, thanks.
Zecher, Rav, Tuv, Ha,
Mhm,
Yabiyu,
mhm,
the Zig, Katecha,
mhm.
Ure, Nenu,
Yiranenu.
Yarenu, Ha, Nun, Vere, Vera, Ha, Hum, Adonai, Erech, Afayim,
This is a pay because it has a dot in it.
Hayim,
Mhm.
Udol, Chesed,
Chased. Very nice. That was very good. I'm just going to repeat it because there was a little muffling going on. Zecher, Rav, Tuvcha, Yabiu, Betzit Katcha, Yiranenu, Chanun, Barachum, Adonai, Erech, Apayim, Ugdal, Chased. Excellent. I'm sorry, but I can't. Jane, I think, would you be willing to read? You have to unmute if you will.
I read, but does
Oh,
somebody?
I'm sorry. Oh, you're right. You know what? I apologize. You did read.
And terribly, but I
No,
tried.
that's all right. Let me give someone else. My screen moved around and you're right. You read. I do apologize.
Not to worry.
Arlene, how about you? Would you be willing to read? You'd rather not. No problem. Okay, Marlene, would you be willing to read?
Sure.
Okay,
We're on Tov.
Tove.
Tov Adonai Lachol Ba'aramcha
Slow down on this one.
V'rachamav
That's it.
V'rachamav Al Kol Ma'aseh
Sav.
Sav
Okay, good.
Yoduha.
Mm-hmm.
That's a weird one. Sorry, I didn't mean to be judgmental. Yoduha Adonai Kol Ma'asecha
Mm-hmm.
Vahasidcha
Decha.
Vahasidecha Yivar Kucha.
Yes, that's very nice. Very well done. All right, hold on, ladies, because I have to switch my screen.
A lot of brain power, Rachel, this Hebrew. With all the, I think the guy in the little animated says there's a lot of chuk and kuk when he gets to these lines. He actually said that in the little practice. He goes, there's a lot of kuk, kuk, kuk.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. Thank you. All right, Mary Ellen, will you start us at the top of, well, it's my second page. I don't know what book you're looking at.
Same one, I think.
Okay.
Kavod Malkutaka Yomeru Ug Vurataka
Yeah.
Ug, okay. Ug Vurataka Yadaberu.
Yeah. Yidabe.
Yadaberu.
Rachel, could you switch the screen for the big print for the rest
You're
of it?
not, you're not seeing this page?
I've
No, we're
only
still
seen
on the
first
first
We're
page.
still on the
I
first page.
apologize.
No
Okay,
worries, but
I thought I
just-
did.
no, I like
I-
the bigger print. That's all. I like the bigger print.
How's this? Can you see? So she just did the top line. You want it bigger than this?
No, this is okay.
Okay, so Mary Ellen just did Kavod Malchutcha Yomeru Ugvaratcha Yudaberu. She's going to start right here where there's a lamed.
Thank you.
Lahodia lifnei ha'adam givrotav
Vu, don't forget the u.
givurotav
Beautiful.
u kavod
So it's
Had-
uchvod. The u and the ch go together.
ukvod
Beautiful.
hadar malchuto.
Beautiful. Really nice. Well done.
Mm.
All right, I've lost everybody. Everybody moved around again. Okay. Edith, would you like to read? It's really up to you.
Sure. Thank you.
So we're here at the map.
Excuse me, clearing my throat.
Sure.
Malkut ka Malkut kal ol olamim
Mm-hmm.
shaltaka
Mm-hmm.
bakal dor vador.
Beautiful. Keep going.
Someach Adonai Lakol
Ho ha.
Lakol Ha Nope Nof Lim
Yep.
Bizo Cave
Mhm.
Lakol Hafufim.
Beautiful. That was really nice. Well done. That took a lot of courage. I know it did.
Thank you.
You did beautifully. Okay. Who haven't I called on? Margaret, have you read yet? Okay, you have to unmute. We're here at the Ayin.
Right. A nay chol elecha
Mhm.
yesaberu
Beautiful.
v'ata no tain
Mhm.
la hem et et ach lam
Mhm.
ba'i to.
Perfect. Next line.
Bo techa.
Te'ach. This is that inverted
Right,
one.
right. Fo, is it pa or fa?
It's po. It's p.
Po.
It's p because there's a dot.
Okay, right. Poteach
Mhm.
et yadecha
Mhm.
umas biya
Mhm.
le chal cha.
This is so chai. The whole
Right.
chai.
Oh, le chal chai ra son.
Very nice. You all are doing great. All right. I'm going to just finish this off because we only have a minute and I'll read it slowly, okay? Tzadik Adonai b'chol drachav v'chasid v'chol ma'asav. Karov Adonai l'chol korav, l'chol asher yikra'uhu ve'emet. Ritzon yire'av ya'aseh, ve'et shav'atam yishma v'yoshi'em. Shomer Adonai et kol ohavav, ve'et kol harshaim yashmid. Tehillat Adonai yedaber pi, ve'yivarech kol basar shem kadsho le'olam va'ed. Va'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata ve'ad olam. Hallelujah. All right.
Yes.
Ladies, this was a great class. I really enjoyed it. I really like when you bring questions of something you just encountered, something you want to learn, something that, believe it or not, everyone else seems interested in, right? It's not just you. So excellent.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Rachel.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, everyone.
No, it's great. So as I said, if there's other things you want me to cover, send an email. You can copy, you can reply to all, just in case there's others who'll say, yeah, that plus, or yeah, that because. Okay. Lenore, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. What are you going, or are we going to cover next week? Because I need to pack my siddur and I want to copy the pages.
Well, frankly, I think we should continue with Ashrei, but I promise we won't spend the whole class on it. We can go to Yigdal. There's no reason not to do Yigdal. Yigdal will be in the Siddur as well. I will send the page to you all with my email. Okay.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Someone else had a hand up, I thought. No? Mary Ellen.
You had mentioned, and I find this the case, the prayer for the state of Israel.
Yes.
At some point, not now, but maybe can we tackle it or find an easy way to do it? I'd love to learn.
So this has come up. You're not the first to ask, and it's advanced. Quite honestly, it's advanced. So, maybe the last week.
Okay.
We'll do it a little bit, but I will tell you that I'm not the only. We had a little conversation with the other teachers about, yeah, I don't recommend you try tackling it. It's really tricky. It's, so anyway, maybe we'll, as I say, maybe at the very end, but I think you're going to be very challenged by it. And I think it's more important to be smooth with certain other ones rather than us spending all our time on that. It's more like I would spend all our time on Ashrei before I would spend all our time on that.
And I think Ashrei would be easier for people if they didn't sing it so fast, chant it so quickly. I think that's part of the issue of learning it, right?
Completely. Yeah. But I think people feel pressure to do it fast, which is unfortunate. Yeah. So Marlene.
I'm following up to what you said earlier about the whole bat mitzvah class, and maybe this question is better for Julia or Ellen. But are we supposed to be learning Haftarah on our own in our own communities?
No. I have nothing to do with the Haftarah class. Okay. So no, I'm sure they're not expecting you to learn chanting on your own. It's just you haven't gotten to it yet.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. All right, ladies.
Okay.
Well, please practice a few minutes, a little bit here and there. Don't worry. All practice is good practice.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat